you'd expect something called a strawberry moon to look obvious, pink, saturated, maybe even a little unreal. But when it rises, it doesn't look like that at all. And that disconnect isn't just a naming quirk, it's the first hint that this isn't really about what you're seeing. It's about something the moon is doing. Because the strawberry moon isn't rare, it happens every year. And yet most people, even people who've seen it, can't actually explain what makes it different. That's because the name survived, but the meaning didn't. Long before calendars, the moon was a system, not symbolic, functional. Communities used it to track time with surprising precision, not by dates, but by signals. Recurring patterns that told you when something in the real world was about to happen. And the full moon in June pointed to something very specific. A short, easy-to-miss window when wild strawberries were ripe. Missed that window, and that was it. No strawberries that year. So the name had nothing to do with how the moon looked. It was about what it told you. And once you see it that way, the whole thing shifts. Because now the question isn't, why isn't it pink? It's, what is this moon actually signaling? The answer starts with a small mismatch most people never think about. A full lunar cycle lasts about 29.53 days. That extra half day means the full moon doesn't line up cleanly with our calendar. It drifts. So the strawberry moon isn't fixed to a date. Some years it shows up in early June. Other years it slides toward the end. And that subtle shift changes something you wouldn't expect, the geometry of how the moon moves through the sky. Because June sits right next to the summer solstice, the point where the sun reaches its highest, longest path across the sky, and the moon mirrors that in reverse. A full moon always sits opposite the sun. So when the sun is at its absolute highest arc, the full moon is forced into its lowest. It doesn't climb. It drifts. It hugs the horizon like it's trying not to be noticed. And that's where the illusion starts stacking. When the moon is low, its light has to travel through more of Earth's atmosphere. That atmosphere strips out shorter wavelengths, blues and violets, and lets the longer ones through. So the moon shifts color. Not pink, but gold, amber, sometimes a deep orange that looks almost artificial. At the exact same time, your brain introduces a second distortion. When the moon sits near the horizon, next to buildings or trees, it looks larger than it actually is. That's the moon illusion, a perceptual glitch that's been studied for centuries and still doesn't have a single agreed-upon explanation. So you're watching two different systems overlap. Physics is changing the color. Your brain is changing the size. And together they create something that feels unusual, even though the moon itself hasn't changed at all. But this is where it takes a turn, because sometimes the moon doesn't just look different. It enters what you could call a kind of maximum setting. There's a slow orbital cycle, about 18.6 years long, called a lunar standstill. Most of the time, the moon rises and sets within a predictable range along the horizon. But during a major standstill, that range stretches to its extremes. In simple terms, the moon starts breaking its usual boundaries. Rising farther north, setting farther south, taking paths that feel slightly wrong if you're used to watching it. And if a strawberry moon lines up with that cycle, something subtle but uncanny happens. The moon is already low because of the seasons, and now it's pushed even lower. It skims the horizon, not rising so much as sliding across it. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you'd just think it looked off. But what you're actually seeing is the moon hitting the outer limits of its normal behavior. Ancient cultures noticed this. Some built structures aligned to these extreme moonrises, tracking a cycle that unfolds so slowly you'd need decades to fully confirm it, which means there are patterns in the sky that are perfectly consistent and still practically invisible within a single human lifetime. And that reframes the strawberry moon again. Because now it's not just a seasonal signal, it's one moment where multiple cycles overlap monthly, yearly, and nearly. 19-year orbital shifts. Different cultures locked onto different parts of that signal. In parts of Europe, this same moon was called the rose moon, tied to blooming cycles. Sometimes the mead moon, marking the start of honey harvest and fermentation. Same moon. Completely different meaning, which suggests the moon isn't really telling a single story. It's reflecting whatever mattered most to the people paying attention. I didn't fully get that until I went out to watch one deliberately. I expected something immediate, something obvious. Instead, it was slow, almost forgettable at first. It rose pale, slightly blurred, easy to ignore if you weren't looking for it. But then it kept changing. Over the next 10 minutes, the color deepened. The edges sharpened. It shifted into this dense, amber glow that looked nothing like it had when it first appeared. And the strangest part was how easy it would have been to miss. If you glanced up, you'd see a normal moon. If you stayed, you'd watch it transform, which is the quiet trick behind all of this. The strawberry moon isn't a spectacle, it's a threshold, a moment where timing, angle, atmosphere, and human perception briefly line up. And the name makes it sound simple, almost decorative, but it's not. The strawberry moon is a timing signal, one that's been hiding in plain sight, layered with physics, filtered through atmosphere, and interpreted through human survival for thousands of years. And once you see that, it's hard to unsee it. Because now every full moon raises a different question. Not, what am I looking at? But, what is this actually telling me?